changing our perspectives. We think failure is going to happen. We know it might happen. How do we get our heads around it? I've got three suggestions, one based on community, one based on your personal failures, and then one based on how you operationalize failure in your organization. He's been mentioned a million times before. Brad Feld. Again, I can't say enough. As I get back into the entrepreneurial space, my local community in Minneapolis has been phenomenal. Bouncing ideas off of. Lots of times I kind of heard it almost said verbatim, but you feel like you're walking into the fog, right, by yourself. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You can actually engage that community, and I'd highly recommend it. But Brad had a great story a little while ago, and it made its way into his most recent book. And Brad had the story of, in Boulder, he was invited out for dinner by one of the VC groups. And he said, well, what's the deal? He said, we're having a wake. A wake? I don't even know this person. Like, no. It's a wake for our company that failed. And they went out to dinner, and they celebrated. They celebrated that failure. They did it together. The young entrepreneurs who might have been crushed, who, in Sarah's words, right, were thinking of themselves and, oh my God, I'm in the abyss. They picked themselves up and they said, no, we can actually do something about this. We can address this head on. We are going to cherish those failures, right? Brad's comment was, it's the community's way of showing these young, fragile entrepreneurs that it was okay to fail. The honor was in trying. So again, I ask you, what kind of community are you going to build? Here's another great one, the failure resume. Tina Selig out of Stanford's Technology Venture Portfolio Group. She teaches a class every year, and she has her students write a failure resume. Not a resume, a failure resume. Not about what your highlights, your accomplishments, or your successes, but your personal, your academic, and your professional failures. With each of those failures, then, you're expected to write down what you learned through that failure. When you do your failure resume, think about this. Look at the list. How many things are on there? 0? Just a few? You might want to actually think about maybe you're not taking enough risk if you don't have enough in your failure resume. And then from an organization, I do understand there are some business people in here. I'll tell you a little bit about this story. This was at my last employer. 2007, I was shutting down a concept store that we had spent 2 years working on. Blood, sweat, tears, and not quite entrepreneurial. It wasn't my money at risk, but it was my effort, my time. And we were shutting this store down, and I had a colleague come up to me saying they were shutting down their work as well. And he was trying to figure out, what are you going to do next? Where do I go? And we talked about it a little bit, and he tells me this story, and it was amazing. They had learned so much. They had done so much. And I said, are you writing this story? Because he was told they had 60 days to find another job within the position and to either find another position or leave. And so what he had done was we had talked about it and said, are you writing this down? Are you going to tell your story? And the answer was no. And we're actually being discouraged from it. We're actually being discouraged from it? You just spent how many millions of dollars of the company's money, and you're not going to tell this story? And the reality was the executive who had sponsored the work didn't want the story told. And so I knew I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to tell the story of our concept store and the other projects. We said, if we get you a forum, will you tell your story? Talked about it with this partner, and they said, yeah, sure, we're probably out of here in 60 days anyway. And that was sort of the impetus for us to start what we termed the failure forums. I do have to recognize there was a senior vice president at the time. We were going to call it some fluffy thing like learning from challenge and change. He said, call it what it is. Call it failure. And I said, and I got that, remember that emotion I was telling you about a little bit earlier? I got it in my stomach. I'm like, oh, it is. It's a failure. It didn't accomplish the goal we set out. So we ended up running these failure forums for 2 years, and the good news is, or the bad news is, didn't really get any recognition for it, didn't get a attaboy, keep going, right? Because most senior executives don't get to the C-suite based on their long list of failures. But I didn't get fired for it either. So I did have a few lessons that came out of it, though. If you're going to run something like that, it was an open forum, half an hour of half an hour of insight. What did you learn? What did you accomplish? What did you learn? And what would you have done different? And then a half an hour of Q&A. We kind of modeled it after TED Talks. Keep it brief, focus in. What did you accomplish? What did you learn? And what would you have done different? But we realized we needed executive sponsorship. So many people still at that point. We had run these for 2 years, and they're like, I'm not talking about it. It wasn't a failure in my books. And so, again, it was one of those programs where I've worked with other companies. It's a way to introduce failure into your organization. It's a way to talk about it. It doesn't have to be shoved under the rug or thrown in the closet and run in the opposite direction.